Hey, welcome back to another episode of the She Is podcast. Today I am here with Laura Ericson, and Laura is going to tell us about how she got through after getting divorced in 2017 and quitting her 14-year career in higher education in 2021. And then started her own travel company, Laura Ericson Group Trips. And now she takes people all over the world and guides them through transformational travel experiences in what she considers off the beaten path destinations. So, Laura, I will hand it over to you if you want to, I don't know, dive into the process of quitting your career of 14 years and going out on your own. If you want to tell us a little bit about that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So as you mentioned, I quit my job in 2021. I feel like many people in the pandemic in 2020 had a shift one way or another, whether they wanted it or not. Um, and for me, it was being forced to work remotely and kind of be displaced from my workplace that I had been in physically for 14 years. 13 years probably at that time. But for me, it was like once I worked remotely and then kind of went back to the office environment, like many people, it just wasn't the same. And like it probably like shouldn't be the same, right? Um, I found that I just no longer was feeling aligned with my job and feeling aligned with like the type of work I was doing. Also, just like working in an office all day versus being able to work remotely, being able to travel and like work from a different place. It just didn't feel right. So I had always wanted to do something different. I had always considered doing something with travel, starting a business. I just didn't quite like know what I wanted to do. And I feel like a lot of people who want to start a business, that's kind of where they get stuck. It's like, I want to start a business, but I don't really know like what kind of business. Um, and so I was stuck there too. And then during the pandemic, I wanted to travel more than anything, like most people. Travel had kind of become like my livelihood. And when nobody was allowed to travel, I think it had such a negative impact on people.
Mhm.
And for me in particular, because my life was so like revolving around travel, I felt kind of like I describe it as dead inside. Like literally, I didn't see my purpose because I couldn't travel. Like that was when I would talk to somebody and they're like, well, what can you do to have fun? What can you do to keep yourself busy? Like, what motivates you? What inspires you? It's like my answer was always travel. And so when that was taken away from me and many people in 2020 and part of 2021, I really like couldn't find my purpose, but it also like made me realize that is my purpose at the same time. So I started traveling once I could. Like towards the end of 2020, you could still go to Mexico. You could still obviously travel in the US. I really never stopped traveling during the pandemic. There was times I was on empty planes, I was in empty airports. People could say that's unsafe. I would say it was the safest time I have ever traveled in my life because nobody was there.
Yeah.
Um, and so I traveled a lot during the pandemic. I went to Mexico a couple of times. I did a solo trip and met a group of girls. And then I had planned a group trip to Colombia and with another company that basically does what I do, and they canceled the trip. This was early 2021. I was devastated because again, I like needed that. I wanted to go so badly. And so I found a girl on a Facebook group who wanted to travel and she said she'd be willing to go with me. So I said, like, if I plan the whole trip and you just come along, will you do it? And she was crazy enough to say yes. And so we went on this trip together. We literally met in an airport for the first time. And she trusted me to take her to Colombia, this place she had never even heard of. We had an amazing time. The trip was fantastic. And she was like, this is amazing. I don't have to do anything. Like I literally just showed up and somebody like guided through me through this like amazing travel experience to a place I'd never even heard of, to things I never would have thought of doing on my own. And it kind of sparked my idea of like, all right, I have something here. There's obviously more people out there who want to do different things, but have no desire to probably plan them on their own. So that's where I got the idea to start my business. And then from there, I just, first, I was going to keep my job. I was going to try to do both. I had planned my first trip to Mexico City for the end of 2021 for Day of the Dead. I had kind of announced that I had started a business. I hired a business coach. At the time, my plan was to just kind of see how it went and do both. But I realized very quickly, a few months in, it was not going to work full time and then also have this travel side gig. And all of my vacation time at my full-time job would have been dedicated to like taking other people on vacation. And
Yeah.
that wasn't really my plan either. So I finally just I had this like come to Jesus moment of like, I need to make a decision. I either need to pursue my dream and say screw it and see if this works, or I can be stuck in a job that no longer is purposeful for me. Even though it pays the bills and I have, in theory, like all the things that you need in a job, it wasn't suiting me. So I said, screw it. I quit my job. I gave them a month's notice, very appreciative of my previous employer, and the time that I spent there. But I just felt like my time was done. I did what I could and moved on. So that's kind of like how I started my business. I really just like had a moment of like, all right, this is it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to fail and have to get a new job. Like, and so, yeah, I started my business at the end of 2021. And just kind of like literally, like, it was like a Friday I was working full time, and a Monday I was sitting here at this desk, like, what now?
Oh, that's so wild. I love that the like the pandemic, right? Like I mean, essentially it made you feel like you lost purpose because travel was sort of taken away. And I love that that was like a light bulb, I don't know, moment for you. Like, oh my God, like that is my purpose. Oh my gosh, I love that. Um, Meeting up with that person or with the girl that you went to was it Columbia with?
So, yeah, yeah.
Um, like not knowing her, not meeting her before, was that like scary at all for you to just meet this person and you're going on this trip with her?
No, because we had talked a lot
Okay.
prior to the trip. Like, we had messaged quite a bit. So I kind of felt like I knew her. I feel like, especially since the pandemic, like people's relationships online have changed.
Yeah.
And I have so many people now that I feel like I know, and in theory, I've never met them in person. Like, I have so many people I talk to for work on Zoom, or people that I talk to on Instagram. Like, now I don't feel like that's even weird to like have these friends that you've literally never met in person. And so that was the case. Like, by the time we had agreed to go on a trip together, I felt like I already knew her well. It was just like we hadn't physically met in person. So it's always weird when you meet somebody from like online in person,
Yeah.
especially somebody you've talked to for a long time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I know another person I met, she lives in Europe, and I met her in Turkey last year, and I was just like, oh my God, you're so much shorter than I pictured you. Like, you just, there's like things like that. You're like
Yeah.
physically, you're not exactly what I thought, or you're taller or shorter or whatever. But other than that, I mean, you literally already know the person.
Yeah.
So no, it wasn't weird. I mean, whenever you travel with somebody, whether it's your best friend or your sister or a stranger, you don't really know how you're going to get along traveling with somebody. And let me tell you, that's my profession. So I can tell you that for a fact. Like, it doesn't really matter who the person is. It could be your significant other. It could be, like I said, your sibling. It does not mean you're compatible traveling together. So like that part didn't necessarily scare me. And I can say now, like with what I do, like all these people coming on trips together, like you don't really know like what you're gonna get, but that's kind of the fun of it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Oh my God. How many trips have you been on so far? Like how many have you planned?
I have completed 5, I think. And then like this year I have 5 plans so far.
Okay.
Right now it's just me, and so 5 is a lot. Um, so I've done 4 countries so far. I'm adding 2 new countries in 2023. I'm adding my first United States trip, which is kind of a big deal because I don't really do the US. But a
Oh,
lot But a lot of people have said, like, I don't necessarily want to leave the US, or I don't want to get a passport, or I'm a mom and I can't leave the country for 10 days. Like, I need to do something shorter. So I just launched my first US trip in Arizona, and that one will be at the end of May. So it's late May, early June, and we will be doing Sedona, Page, like Antelope Canyon, Horseshoe Bend, like all the vortex hiking. So it's kind of like a retreat slash group trip mixed into one. It'll have a little bit more of like the healing vibes that you get from Sedona, and we're going to be doing some Reiki and yoga and astrology mixed in with drinking wine and having fun. And so, yeah, that's my first like US trip. So I'm excited to do that one because it's going to be very different than what I've done in the past in other countries.
That sounds like so much fun. Like that is like my dream trip. Sedona is on my bucket list. So, oh my gosh, so envious of all the people that will be joining you. Um, planning all of this. Tell us about that. How does that work? How does that go? I mean, I'm not a planner. So when I think of doing this, I'm just like, oh, like I need you in my life.
Yeah, and like everyone has those things that they have no desire to do. I have lots of things that I gladly pay somebody for.
Yeah.
So I get that. Yeah, it's a lot. Like sometimes I think people underestimate what goes into planning a trip. Um, and or they wonder like why my trips might cost more than like a trip you could do on your own. And I say, because you're paying for a service. Like not only are you paying for somebody to do it for you and like have it ready for you, but like you're paying an expert to research to make sure that you're getting the best possible experience, you're doing the best possible activities. Sometimes you're doing things that you wouldn't have been able to schedule on your own because you don't have the connections of being in the travel industry. So it's a combination of factors, but it really comes down to like expertise and time, like the amount of time that I put into planning these trips. I was just training somebody yesterday who's going to be helping me, and we were setting up, in Asana, like how to manage a trip and like from beginning to end. And she was just like blown away at the amount of details that go into planning a trip because it's not just, booking hotels and planning excursions. There's when this becomes a business, like all the communications that have to go out and all the things that I need to get from people and all of the like little pieces that go along the way. Like there's so many details, and all these things that come together. And then you multiply that by the fact that I'm doing 5 trips a year, it becomes a lot. And on top of that, I'm supposed to be planning new trips and scouting new locations and adding more into the mix that people can go to different destinations. And I'm doing it all myself. So yeah, it's a ton. But the people who have gone on my trips have said it's worth every penny because the beauty of what I do is that you just get to show up.
Mhm.
And when I say like that's what vacation's supposed to be about, I mean, some people love trip planning, like they think that's fun and great. Like I love it too. I get why some people love that. Um, some people don't want to like have to Google a bunch of different things and make decisions, and then when you even if you like have the perfect trip planned, all the things that go wrong in travel, like all of the like different components that could go wrong and all of the decisions that you still need to make on a trip of like where to go to dinner, how are we going to get there, like how like there's so many decisions that need to be made. And sometimes like that just becomes like for me when I'm on a vacation, at some point I get into like decision fatigue mode. I don't want to even decide where to eat anymore. I'm just like over it. And
Yeah.
it's exhausting. So like I take all of those decisions out of your vacation, and kind of people just put their trust in me that like I'm going to pick things that they like and hopefully like the best reviewed places and the best reviewed experiences so that there aren't really any like doozies along the way. It's like I've already gone and tested it to make sure that what you're doing is amazing. So then you just get to literally like show up. I help people like pack in terms of giving them like a list. I help them book their flights in terms of like where they need to be and when. But then every other piece of it is coordinated by me. Some people are worried, like, oh, am I going to get enough free time? Well, I do plan in free time. I usually like have things they can do with me during free time if they don't want to be alone. But if they're like, I want to go to a museum, that's not generally something I'll do like during my trips. I have like a list of things that you can do, places you can go, places you can eat, so that there are opportunities for you to like make decisions and explore on your own.
Yeah.
or you want to shop or whatever, like some of those things that like are maybe more personal preferences, I leave that to kind of the free time. And then during our group time, I try to schedule the things that I think everyone's going to want to do.
Okay. Wow. That's like literally from you literally cover like everything from A to Z, even from like the packing. I did not realize that like the first time we connected, like that's something you cover. Like that's amazing. Oh my God.
Yeah, and I tell people I don't physically pack your bags for you, but I
Right.
like I might as well. Like I give you a list.
Yeah.
I do an orientation call prior to our trip where I kind of cover everything the itinerary, everything you can expect during a trip. So that all those questions that people generally have when they're going to a new place,
Yeah.
especially like a place like Morocco, that's my next group trip. Like that's a place that's pretty like extreme and foreign to a lot of people. So
Yeah.
you're just gonna have like more questions for a place like that. Like you're gonna it's a language that most people don't speak. It's going to be a currency people have probably never used. It's just a lot different than going to Mexico. And so, like, I have to do a lot more preparation for people so that they feel comfortable and know what to expect when they're there. Morocco is also a place that, although amazing, is kind of known for like innocent little scams on tourists. And so, I prepare people for like what they could expect to see so that when a man comes up to you with a monkey that you don't get a monkey on your back and then you're forced to like pay him money to get a picture with his cute little monkey or
Oh
like a snake.
no.
There's all these little things that happen. So
Yeah.
preparing people ahead of time to watch out for these things so that they do have a good experience because travel can go wrong in so many ways if you're not prepared, especially in a place like Morocco. So part of the beauty of having a guided trip with not only me, but also a professional guide is that we're there to help you, protect you, watch out for you, and make sure that you're not getting into any kind of trouble. Obviously, we can't guarantee like nothing's ever going to happen, but you are definitely reducing the chances of something going wrong when you're traveling with me and a guide.
Mm. When are you on to Morocco?
I have two Morocco trips. One's in April and one is in May, so I'll be there for almost a month.
Oh, so okay,
Yeah,
one in April, one in May. Will
yep.
you come back to the US? No. Okay.
No, so I have like a 10-day April trip. Um, then I have maybe 3 or 4 days in between where I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might go find a beach or something and just chill for a few days. And
Yeah.
then group two rolls in and yeah, I stay there the entire time. I'm not leaving.
Okay.
So it'll be a long time. So, and that's where people think that my job is just vacation. And it's like, well, this is literally my job. Like taking other people on their vacation is my job. So like they're on a vacation. My job is just to make sure everyone's where they need to be, everything's going smoothly, everyone's happy. Like I always say I'm like a wedding planner, but it's like a destination wedding and the wedding goes for 10 days. Like I'm just there every day as their concierge, making sure that everything is going right. And when things are going wrong, then I'm there to help problem solve. So I'm not on vacation. I've already been to Morocco. Like I've done the things. Like my job is not for myself to like enjoy Morocco. It's to make sure that everyone else is enjoying Morocco, that they're getting photos of themselves, just to like make sure that everything really is going smoothly for their vacation.
Yeah. Oh, all the destinations that you take people to, um, have you already been there yourself always? Okay.
Yep, always. Yeah, I make it hard for myself. I don't want to take people to a place I've never been. I feel like the benefit of taking me with you is that I've been there and I'm an expert in that country. I've already researched it. You can research all day long, but unless you've done something and like been there and tried it, you don't really know until like you're there.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel right as a professional being like, come with me to this country that I've never been to before and let's figure it out together. Like, I mean, that might be a whole nother business, but like
Yeah.
to me, I don't feel comfortable. Even sometimes, like on my trips, I'll have maybe like one day where I plan an activity that I haven't done before.
Mhm.
And that's always the uncomfortable day where people are like, hey, so what can I expect with this? And I'm like, I don't really know because I haven't been. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want the whole trip to feel that way where people are asking me questions and I'm just like, I'm not really sure. That's where I would feel like I'm on vacation because I'm just like experiencing everything for the first time, like
Yeah.
they are. Part of the benefit of me going first is like I do get to experience those amazing things. So like I get the shock factor out of the way. And then the next time around, like it's not about me, it's about them. Like I don't need to be in the hot air balloon looking at the views. I'm in the hot air balloon to take their photos. So I'm not even like necessarily looking down. I'm there as their photographer. So, part of going first is that like I get all of it out of the way. And then the second time I go or the third time I go, I'm just there to make sure the trip's going well.
Okay. Okay. I love that. You call places off the path, off the beaten path destinations. Will you tell us about that? Like what that means to you?
Yeah, there's certainly more off the beaten path than what my current trips are. But I tend to focus on places that don't get as much tourism, bringing attention to countries that I believe deserve people seeing how wonderful they are.
Mhm.
Um, like people always say, like, when are you gonna go to Italy? And it's like I could do an Italy trip. Like Italy is amazing. I'm not discounting the beauty of Italy. I've been and it's amazing. People should go. But do you need me to take you to Italy? Not necessarily. Like it's a pretty safe place to be. It's pretty easy to navigate. Like I don't feel like people necessarily need to go to Italy on a group trip. Whereas I would say a place like Morocco, there's some definite benefits to being there in a group versus being there on your own. Same thing with Colombia. A lot of people are scared of Colombia. They have heard horrible things about it. They've watched Narcos. They think that, you're going to get like taken away by the cartel. It couldn't be further from the truth. And so I'm trying to bring attention to these countries that deserve tourism just as much as places like Italy and Paris and London and all these places that people feel like are more safe when in reality like these are just like lesser known places. And often these places are less touristy, there's less people there, there's less lines. My personal thing when traveling is I don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of tourists standing in a line like while I'm doing something that doesn't really make me feel like I'm being immersed in a culture when I'm standing in line with a bunch of American people.
Mhm.
It kind of like takes away from the magic of like being in a foreign country. And so when you start going to some of these like lesser traveled places, you really do feel like you're the only one there. Like you really feel like you're the only American in Colombia and you're just around Colombian people and you're like really like living and breathing their culture. To me, that's a completely different experience than when you're in France, for example. Like I'll just use Paris as an example because it's obviously very popular. Like when you're in Paris, you're going to probably be surrounded by a lot of American people.
Yeah.
And it's just very, very touristy. And if you've ever been somewhere touristy, you'll know what I mean. Like you just don't feel the authenticity sometimes of where you are because it's brought so much tourism that sometimes it can like ruin a place, in my opinion. There is such a thing as over tourism, and tourists unintentionally sometimes ruin a place because they bring so many like mobs of people that like now all you're doing is standing around in lines like with people waiting to go see the same things, and like it just like I said for me it ruins the experience. So you start taking people to some of these other places where there really aren't a lot of people traveling there, like it preserves that like authenticity of where you are. So that's kind of why I picked the different places. That and like I just think I've picked places that people generally have said like, oh, I really want to go there, but I don't know if it's safe. Like I want to go to Mexico City, but I've heard it's unsafe. I want to go to Colombia, but like my mom says I'm gonna get kidnapped by the cartel. I want to go to Morocco, but like I'm just a little unsure because I don't know the language and it just seems really foreign. Like those are the places I focus on because I do think like there is a benefit to going with a professional.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I love that. Also, like I know for myself, like I don't know if I would have ever thought of like the whole too many tourists at one time where it like takes away from the experience. So I love that way of thinking and like your experience and perspective on that.
Yeah, there's a whole Netflix documentary, or there's lots of them
Oh,
on over tourism. You can Google it. So it is something people need to be aware of in general, beyond just like group trips, of just how tourism can literally ruin a place. So it's something as a tourist, like you need to be mindful of as you're traveling. I always say my goal in traveling is to leave a place better than I found it. So whether that's like a lot of times giving back to the country I'm in whatever way I can, whether it's giving people money or donating my time or, like just doing something to make the place better instead of just taking. Because I think sometimes people, when they're on vacation, it's like over consumerism. It's like eating as much as I want and just like wasting, look at like cruises. Like it's just like I don't care because it's all inclusive and I paid for it. So I'm going to take as much as I want and not really care about like the aftermath of that. I think a lot of people like don't think about what that actually does because like they're just thinking I'm on vacation. This is my vacation. I earned it. This is my money. And they don't really think about like all the other like pieces of that and how that can potentially like impact another country.
I've never thought of that like until this very moment. Like I mean, I've been on vacations all inclusive before and I've went with that mentality. So like
Yeah, a
now,
lot of people, I mean, that's what they're designed for. It's like
yeah,
do as much as you want, eat as much as you want, drink as much as you want.
yeah,
Like who cares if you don't finish it because like you paid for it.
yeah.
Um it's an innocent way of thinking. It's kind of how it's been designed and that's why I personally I have no problem with what other people do and I think people can travel however they want to travel. I personally just don't like all inclusive experiences for all kinds of reasons, one because of that, but also because like I think it just doesn't get you again off the beaten path. It doesn't get you out there because you've now feel like, well, I've spent my money here, so now I need to stay here and make the most of it. And that mentality kind of keeps you from maybe going and trying a new restaurant because you've already paid for your meal here, or
Yeah.
going and doing an excursion because like, well, my food and drinks are free here all day, so I'm going to lay by the pool instead. So again, like I have no problem with all inclusives. I think people can choose to spend their time however they want. Um, my trips, although they kind of function as an all inclusive, it's an all inclusive like experience all over the place
Yeah.
because I've picked and chosen like all of the best things and I'm giving you kind of one price for that. So you're not having to like plan all of that, but you're still getting like that unique, authentic experience.
Interesting. Oh God, that's such a perspective shift. I love it. Um, between quitting your job and between now, well, I guess in your time that you started your business, is there like one thing that you absolutely just, I mean, of course you love the majority of it, but do you have a favorite thing that you love about your business, about traveling, anything?
Yeah, I mean, there's been like lots of challenges. Honestly, more challenges than benefits at this point because I'm 1 year into a business and that's just reality. But I will say, like, as hard as my job is and as for as much as I work, um, people think I do this for myself, like, because I get to travel. And like I said, like, I think if people really saw like what I do, how much I work, and what I'm actually doing on these trips, like, you would realize this is literally just my job. But I do it because this gives other people the ability to travel in a way that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. Not that they couldn't have figured it out on their own, but a lot of these people like maybe wouldn't have done it if they don't join a trip like this. I've had people who now are like completely open-minded to different ways of travel that they weren't going to be, if they had never gone on this trip,
Mhm.
or it shifts people's thinking. It opens their minds, it gives them new perspectives, it allows them to meet new people, it makes them want to travel more and maybe to like different places than they would have thought. I've had people say like I never would have considered going to Colombia. Some people just sign up and they're like, I don't even know where Colombia is, but like I just want to do something different. I don't want to do the typical like London, Paris, Madrid trip. I want to do something different that other people aren't doing. And I think like once you go on one of these trips, like you realize, for me, it was like Mexico City. I have been to Mexico probably like 20 times in my life, no joke. And I'd always gone to the beach, like Cancun, Cozumel. I've done it all.
Yep.
And there, again, nothing wrong with Mexico. Mexico is beautiful and the beaches are beautiful. But you go to a place like Mexico City, it will blow your mind because it's so completely different than anything you have done on a beach vacation in Mexico. And then you're like, holy crap, there's a whole country that people aren't exploring because all we're doing is sitting on beaches with cocktails in our hands, sitting at all inclusives, again, like in that little like safety bubble of
Yeah.
being on a resort. And so like even for like I wanted to go to Mexico City because I had like heard lots of great things about it and I just kind of put it on my list as a place I needed to be. And I went and I was like, yep, this is exactly what I needed. Like it opened my mind. It made me realize like now I want to go to Oaxaca. Like now there's all these other places in Mexico that I've researched that I've gone to some of them, but like now I have a whole Mexico list of places that I want to go that like most people probably don't even know exist because again, all we're thinking about is like what we see and like hear about typically from the average, consumer, if you will.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I'm like, oh my God. By the time you are like, I don't know, 50s, 60s, like you're gonna have traveled so many places. And I am just like in awe of that, thinking about that. So, oh my God. Um, anyways,
Yeah,
this,
and like the funny thing is when people, I obviously travel a lot. I probably
yeah,
travel every month. I probably take hundreds of flights a
yeah.
year. But like if you asked me how many countries I've been to, like people would be surprised. I don't count, but I think like last time I checked, it was around like 19. So
Wow.
you would think like, and if for a person who doesn't travel a lot, like that seems like a lot.
That sounds
But
like
for
a
an
lot. Yeah.
if you asked like an average like traveler, a person who like travels a ton, I know people that are like 50, 60, 80 countries,
Oh, wow.
100 and 120 countries. Like people have this like long list of countries they've been to. So like in comparison, I really considering how often I travel and how many times like I have traveled in my life, I have not been to that many countries. But for me, it's not about like checking off a list.
Mhm.
And I say that in general, like I do have like a bucket list of like places I would like to go, but I want to go there with intention and not just like I see people going on these trips and they're like they have 1 week in Europe and so they go to like 5 countries. And I'm like, I mean, that's again, that's cool, like great, but like what are you really like gaining from that if you're spending all of your time just like moving around just so you can get like a little taste and say you went to each place, but like you didn't really get to see anything because you were, just spending all your time moving from city to city.
Yeah.
So for me, I've spent so much time like repeating places and going to the same places, like especially with my trip, my company now. Like I go to the same countries because I'm on these trips. But like I said, I've been to Mexico like 10 to 15 times, and that's why I actually decided. Part of the reason I decided to start this was like when I got divorced. I looked back because I had traveled a lot before my marriage, and I lived in Spain. When I was 12, my parents took me to Venezuela. Like, that's not normal. I had just done a lot of like really cool, unique things at a very young age. I was really fortunate to have like parents that traveled. But then I got married and we just did what a lot of people do and we went to Mexico every year. We just like booked our February Mexico beach vacation because it was easy and we were busy, full time and full time employed, and we just did our Mexico vacation. I looked back as I got divorced and I was like, wow, I have been to Mexico like 12 times. I've done the same things over and over. And like, I could have gone to 12 countries. Like, I could have seen a lot of different things in the time that I spent repeating the same vacation just because it was easy, it was comfortable, it was what I knew.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I realized like I literally put a ban on myself to go to Mexico after I got divorced. I said, I'm not going to Mexico anymore unless it's Mexico City. That was my one exception. I was like, I'm not going to Mexico anymore. Like Mexico's off the table. If anybody asks me to go to Mexico, the trip better be free because I'm not going. I manifested that though because last year I got a free trip to Mexico. But
Oh
like
my God.
I literally like I was like I'm not doing this anymore because my time and money is precious and
Yeah.
my life is short.
Yeah.
And life, in my opinion, life is too short to be spent going to the same place when you have this huge world out there. Of course, there's places you love and you want to go back to. I
Mhm.
have those places too, but like that's always the challenge of like, okay, I have a little bit of time. Am I going to go somewhere I've already been or am I going to try something new? And I think sometimes people go back to like, I'm going to go where I've already been because I know I like it and it's comfortable and I know it's going to be a good experience. But then there's like the what if of like, what are you missing if you don't ever try something different?
Yeah. What's one of your favorite places?
People ask me this all the time, and I hate to give this answer, but I mean, one, I don't have a favorite, but it's the places I take people. I mean, that's the reason I take them there. Like, it's Colombia, it's Morocco, it's Turkey, Mexico City. I love Portugal. I'm working on a Portugal trip. Portugal is like a beautiful country. I love Spain. I lived there twice, so Spain will always have my heart. But yeah, the honestly, the places I am taking people are my favorite places. That's why I'm doing it.
That's awesome. I love this. I love this conversation. I love getting the perspective shifts from you throughout this, like especially around like the inclusive, touristy type perspective shift. That was massive. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experience with us.
Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah. I will put all of Laura's information in the show notes so that, I mean, if it's on your heart to travel, you should totally connect with her, especially if you want to get out there, see different places in the world than the typical go-tos. So, thank you again for your time, your energy, your knowledge.
Yeah, thank you.